an abandoned puppy sat trembling beside a river all night, until a giant crocodile rose from the water. Left to die in the wilderness, the tiny pup faced certain death as darkness fell. Hungry predators lurked in the shadows, while the unforgiving elements threatened to claim his fragile life. What happened next would defy all laws of nature and challenge everything we thought we knew about the animal kingdom. No one could have predicted the extraordinary bond that would form between prey and predator on that fateful night. The cruel sound of tires screeching away echoed through the wilderness as a tiny brown puppy tumbled from a speeding car. His confused eyes, still not fully open from his young age, watched as the only world he'd known disappeared around the bend, leaving him utterly alone for the first time in his short life. The dust settled on his soft fur as reality sank in. He had been discarded like unwanted trash. The puppy sat frozen for nearly an hour, expecting the car to return. His innocent mind couldn't comprehend the deliberate abandonment. Eventually, hunger and thirst forced his trembling legs to move. Each step was uncertain on the rough terrain that scratched his delicate paws, so different from the soft blanket he'd known before. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the landscape, the puppy's whimpers grew more desperate. The unfamiliar sounds of the wild sent shivers down his spine. Birds of prey circling overhead, insects buzzing ominously, and distant growls that made his tiny heart race. He wandered aimlessly, following his nose until he reached the edge of a vast, murky river, a place where even grown animals approached with caution. With nowhere else to go and exhaustion overtaking his small frame, he curled up on the muddy bank, his tiny body shivering against the dropping temperature. Night fell like a death sentence across the wilderness. The darkness brought a symphony of terrifying sounds. Distant howls that carried on the wind, rustling bushes that seemed to move closer with each passing hour, and the occasional splash from the water that made the puppy's ears perk up in alert fear. Each noise could mean the end, each shadow a potential predator. His hunger pangs were almost as painful as his broken heart, and the loneliness crushed his spirit with each passing moment. The moon reflected on the river's surface, creating eerie patterns that danced before the puppy's tired eyes. He tried to make himself as small as possible, pressing his body against a protruding root for any semblance of protection. The night seemed endless, a cruel eternity of fear and abandonment. Twice he had to scramble away from the water's edge when it rose unexpectedly, soaking his already cold fur and adding misery to his plight. Several times throughout that terrible night, the puppy howled, a sound so pitiful and small that it barely carried beyond the riverbank. It was the cry of a creature too young to understand why the world had turned so cruel, too innocent to deserve such a fate. His cries went unanswered as the stars wheeled overhead, indifferent to his suffering. Somehow, through sheer will and perhaps a spark of survival instinct buried deep in his DNA, the tiny creature survived until the first light of dawn streaked across the sky. Exhausted, dehydrated, and weakened by hunger, he cautiously crept to the river's edge for a drink. His reflection, matted fur, sad eyes, and a face too young to be so forlorn, rippled in the water as he lapped desperately at the life-giving liquid. The puppy was unaware he was being watched from below the surface, unaware that something ancient and patient had noticed his arrival the previous evening, unaware that his fate was about to take a turn that would defy all natural laws. But as the morning mist cleared from the water's surface and the sun's rays penetrated the depths, something ancient and massive had already set its cold, reptilian eyes on the helpless puppy. Beneath the water, powerful muscles tensed, ready to propel a prehistoric predator toward the unsuspecting victim. The water barely rippled as the massive crocodile emerged. 15 feet of ancient predator rose silently from the depths, water cascading off armored scales that had evolved to perfection over millions of years. This was the river's apex predator, a living fossil whose ancestors had witnessed the rise and fall of dinosaurs. Its battle-scarred hide told stories of territorial fights, successful hunts, and survival through drought and flood alike. Every inch of this creature had been crafted by evolution into the perfect killing machine. The puppy, still lapping desperately at the water's edge, remained oblivious to the danger. His small pink tongue darted in and out, his entire focus on quenching his overwhelming thirst after the long, terrifying night. His reflection shattered with each desperate lap, the ripples distorting his already disheveled appearance. Behind him, birds scattered from nearby trees in a sudden explosion of wings and warning calls. Nature's alarm system that went unheeded by the inexperienced young canine. Even the insects fell silent, as if holding their breath for the inevitable. Time seemed to slow as the crocodile's enormous jaws, lined with dozens of jagged teeth, each one capable of puncturing the thickest hide, opened wide, muscles tensed beneath prehistoric armor, ready to execute the lightning-fast strike that had remained unchanged for millennia. The distance between predator and prey closed in microseconds. Death was certain, inescapable, and moments away. The morning sun glinted off the crocodile's teeth, already wet with anticipation. But then, something extraordinary happened. The crocodile stopped, jaws hovering mere inches from the puppy's fragile body. Ancient eyes, yellow and cold as topaz stones, studied the trembling creature before it. A strange hesitation passed through the reptilian brain. A momentary pause in the perfect killing sequence that had been hardwired by countless generations of successful hunters. Perhaps it was the puppy's pitiful size, offering barely a morsel for such a massive hunter. Perhaps it was the lack of fear in the small creature, so different from the usual panic that triggered the final strike. Or perhaps it was something more profound, a glitch in the predatory instinct that had served the species for eons. The puppy, finally sensing the presence behind him, turned slowly. His innocent eyes, still bright despite his ordeal, met the reptilian stare of the crocodile. Where terror should have paralyzed him, where his instincts should have screamed for flight, curiosity took hold instead. Too young to understand the concept of natural enemies, too innocent to comprehend the dance of predator and prey that governed the wilderness, the puppy tilted his head slightly, ears perked forward in a gesture of innocent inquiry. A small whimper escaped his throat, not of fear, but of greeting. For long moments, they remained frozen in this impossible tableau, nature's most efficient killer face to face with absolute vulnerability. The laws of the wild demanded blood. The ancient rhythm of life and death called for completion. Yet something stronger held the ancient predator in check. The morning breeze rustled the reeds around them, carrying the sense of the awakening wilderness. A fish jumped nearby, breaking the silence, but not the spell that seemed to bind these two unlikely creatures together. The crocodile's massive tail swished once, sending ripples across the water's surface that expanded outward like the ripples of change about to transform both their lives. Then, in a movement so gentle it seemed impossible from such a creature, it lowered its armored head to the riverbank. Nostrils flared, taking in the scent of the puppy. Milk-sweet, unthreatening, and carrying the unmistakable trace of abandonment that perhaps resonated with something deep within the ancient reptile's own experience. The puppy, driven by the same loneliness that had made the night so unbearable, by the instinctive need for companionship that defined his species, took a tentative step forward. His tiny paw prints left marks in the mud beside the massive imprint of the crocodile's jaw. Another step followed, then another, each one defying millions of years of evolutionary programming that should have sent him fleeing in terror. What happened next would be dismissed as impossible by any scientist, denied by experts as anthropomorphic fantasy, and yet witnessed by the rising sun alone. The tiny puppy pressed his soft muzzle against the rough, armored snout of the crocodile, and survived. More than survived. He was met with a stillness, an acceptance that transcended understanding. The crocodile's eyes, usually unblinking and cold, closed briefly at the contact, as if processing this unprecedented turn of events. Two souls, abandoned by their own kind for different reasons, found each other at the edge of a river where death and life intertwined in daily struggle. The crocodile, old and bearing the scars of territorial battles that had left it ostracized from its kind, recognized something in the abandoned puppy that transcended the ancient division between predator and prey. Perhaps it was the shared experience of solitude, the understanding that both had been cast aside, the puppy by human cruelty, the crocodile by the harsh laws of its own species that favored youth and strength. The puppy, emboldened by the lack of aggression, wagged his tail tentatively. The simple gesture, so full of hope and trust, seemed to seal an unspoken pact between them. When he curled up against the rough hide of the crocodile's foreleg, exhaustion finally claiming his small body, the ancient predator remained motionless, becoming a living shelter against the growing heat of the day. As the morning light strengthened across the wilderness, painting the river in gold and amber, an impossible friendship began to form. One that would challenge everything we thought we knew about the natural world, about instinct and choice, about the boundaries between species that had remained firm since time immemorial. The river continued its eternal journey, witness to this miracle on its banks, carrying the news downstream to a world that would never believe it. In the days to come, this unlikely pair would face challenges beyond imagination, threats from both the natural world and the human one that had first abandoned the puppy. But for now, in this perfect moment of connection, they simply existed together, predator and prey, strength and vulnerability, ancient and young, rewriting the rules of nature with each breath they took. Days passed by the riverside, each one strengthening the impossible bond between predator and prey. The crocodile, whom the puppy had come to recognize as protector rather than threat, created a safe haven in a small inlet where the water was calm and partially hidden by overhanging vegetation. Here, the ancient reptile would bask in the sun while keeping vigilant watch over its tiny companion. The dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves created a peaceful sanctuary, a small world separate from the harsh realities of the wilderness beyond. The puppy, whom we shall call Rusty for his reddish-brown coat that gleamed copper in the sunlight, quickly adapted to his new life. His initial weakness gave way to a playful energy that seemed to both puzzle and fascinate the crocodile. The first time Rusty regained enough strength to attempt a playful bow, front paws extended, rear end high, tail wagging furiously, the crocodile had tilted its massive head in what almost appeared to be confusion. This universal canine invitation to play was foreign to the ancient reptile. Yet something about the puppy's exuberance sparked a response that defied evolutionary programming. Rusty would dart around the massive reptile, yipping excitedly, occasionally brave enough to pounce on the armored tail, a game that the crocodile tolerated with surprising patience. Sometimes, the great predator would slowly swish its tail through the shallow water, creating waves that Rusty would chase and bite at, his small teeth harmlessly grazing the armored scales. These moments of play seemed to awaken something long dormant in the ancient creature, perhaps memories of its own youth, or simply the novel experience of interaction without the intent to kill. Their most pressing challenge was food. The crocodile, naturally, could feed itself with swift strikes into the river that almost always emerged successful. The explosive power of its hunting technique was a marvel to behold. The water barely disturbed until the sudden, violent surge that rarely failed to capture prey. But feeding Rusty required innovation beyond the reptile's natural instincts. The solution came in an unexpected form. After each hunt, the crocodile would drag its prey to the shore and, with surprising delicacy, use its massive jaws to separate small, manageable portions for the puppy. The first time this happened, Rusty had approached cautiously, hunger overcoming fear as the crocodile nudged a morsel of fish toward him with its snout. The gentleness with which those powerful jaws, capable of exerting tons of pressure, could perform such delicate operations was remarkable. These offerings, usually fish or small riverbank creatures, kept Rusty alive during those crucial early weeks. As time passed, the crocodile seemed to develop an understanding of which parts of its prey were most suitable for the puppy, avoiding bones that were too large or portions that might be difficult for Rusty to digest. Communication developed between them in subtle ways that would have astonished any biologist fortunate enough to witness it. The crocodile's low rumbling growl, typically a warning to potential threats, became a familiar comfort to Rusty. Different vibrations carried different meanings. The deep, barely audible rumble that signaled contentment was distinct from the slightly higher-pitched warning sound that sent Rusty scurrying to safety. The puppy learned that different tones meant different things: danger approaching, time to hide, safe to emerge. He became attuned to the subtle body language of his protector, the way the ridged tail would stiffen slightly before any potential threat was visible, the almost imperceptible narrowing of those ancient eyes when something disturbed the crocodile's territory. Likewise, the crocodile seemed to understand Rusty's various barks and whines, responding with appropriate movements or actions. When Rusty's high-pitched yip signaled excitement rather than fear, the crocodile would remain relaxed, sometimes even allowing the puppy to clamber over its back or rest between the ridges of its armored spine. When a particular whining sound indicated thirst, the crocodile would shift position to allow easier access to the clean water at the edge of their inlet. This interspecies communication evolved daily, growing more nuanced as their bond deepened. One afternoon, as storm clouds gathered on the horizon, painting the sky in ominous shades of charcoal and slate, the crocodile became unusually active, sensing the approaching tempest before even the most weather-wise animals. It began to dig at the riverbank with powerful claws that had primarily evolved for navigating water, not earth. Rusty watched with curious tilts of his head as the crocodile systematically excavated a shallow cave in the riverbank, using powerful claws and tail to create a shelter above the waterline. The precision with which the ancient reptile worked suggested an intelligence that went beyond mere instinct. It was preparing specifically for the puppy's needs. When the deluge came, with rain so heavy it seemed to fall in sheets rather than drops, Rusty huddled inside this makeshift den, protected from both rain and rising waters. The crocodile positioned itself at the entrance, half in water, half on land, creating a living barrier against any threats that might emerge in the chaos of the storm. Lightning illuminated the scene in brief, brilliant flashes, casting dramatic shadows across the crocodile's textured hide. Thunder rolled across the sky, causing Rusty to whimper softly until a gentle rumble from the crocodile, different from any sound it had made before, seemed to reassure him that all was well. Throughout the night, as the storm raged with tropical fury, the crocodile remained vigilant. when the rising water threatened to breach their sanctuary. The massive reptile used its body to divert the flow, ensuring the puppy's shelter remained dry. By morning, when the storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and glistening, Rusty emerged to find small fish stranded in puddles around their territory. An unexpected feast that the crocodile helped gather before the sun could dry the temporary pools. Word of this strange partnership spread through the wilderness in ways only animals understand. The natural telegraph of scent, sound, and observation carried news of this anomaly throughout the ecosystem. Other animals would come to witness the phenomenon, cautiously at first, then with growing boldness. Birds that would normally avoid the crocodile's territory began to perch nearby, sometimes even landing momentarily on the great reptile's back when it remained still for long periods. These feathered visitors seemed to understand that the usual rules no longer applied in this particular stretch of riverbank. A family of otters, typically wary of crocodiles that would view them as prey, established a home just downstream, seemingly reassured by the crocodile's uncharacteristic behavior. Their playful antics sometimes drew Rusty's attention, and the puppy would watch with fascination as they dove and twisted in the current. Occasionally, when the otters ventured closer than usual, the crocodile would make a soft, warning sound, not threatening, but establishing boundaries that kept both Rusty and the otters safe from misunderstandings. Even a cautious deer began to use their inlet as a watering spot during the hottest part of the day, somehow sensing that the predatory instincts of the great reptile were, if not dormant, at least redirected. The natural order of the river was subtly shifting, centered around this improbable alliance that defied every natural law. It was as though the crocodile's decision to protect rather than devour had created a small zone of truce in the otherwise competitive wilderness. But the wilderness holds many dangers, and not all were willing to accept this aberration in the natural order. As Rusty grew stronger and more confident, venturing further from the immediate protection of his reptilian guardian, ancient enemies took notice. A pair of wild dogs, lean and hungry, began to scout the periphery of the crocodile's territory, drawn by the scent of the puppy. They would watch from the dense undergrowth, calculating, waiting for an opportunity when the crocodile might be submerged or hunting. The balance they had found was fragile, and forces beyond their control were about to test the limits of their extraordinary bond. Nature, while occasionally permitting exceptions to its rules, inevitably seeks to restore the established order. The wild dogs were simply the first challenge, a test of the crocodile's commitment to its unusual ward. One morning, as dawn broke across the river in streaks of pink and gold, painting the water's surface with molten light, a new scent drifted on the breeze, human. The crocodile's muscles tensed immediately, ancient memories of hunters and their weapons stirring deep survival instincts that had been passed down through countless generations. Its yellow eyes narrowed, scanning the tree line for movement, nostrils flaring to better analyze this most dangerous of threats. Rusty, still innocent to the complicated relationship between humans and wildlife, perked his ears with interest. Something in his domesticated ancestry recognized that scent, stirred dormant memories of hands that had once fed and petted him before his cruel abandonment. His tail gave a tentative wag, even as the crocodile's warning rumble suggested caution. Neither of them could know that the approaching humans would change everything, that their unique friendship was about to face its greatest challenge yet. The footsteps grew closer, voices carried on the morning air, and the crocodile made a decision. With gentle jaws, it picked Rusty up by the scruff of his neck, just as a mother would carry her pup, and moved deeper into their territory, away from the approaching danger, determined to protect what had become most precious in its ancient, solitary existence. The stage was set for a confrontation between the natural world and human intervention, between the laws of nature and the exception that had flourished against all odds on this remote riverbank. As the sun climbed higher in the morning sky, casting shorter shadows across the water, the crocodile and puppy waited in tense silence for whatever fate would bring next. The humans arrived just as the morning mist was lifting from the river's surface, creating an ethereal landscape where water and air seemed to merge in shifting curtains of pearly gray. There were 3 of them, 2 men and a woman, moving with the practiced efficiency of people accustomed to wilderness expeditions. Their khaki clothing blended with the surrounding foliage, the fabric worn in places that spoke of countless days in the field. The equipment they carried, specialized cameras, recording devices, sample collection kits, suggested a scientific purpose rather than hunting or tourism. Each movement was deliberate, minimizing noise and disturbance to the environment they had come to study. From their hiding place in a dense thicket of reeds, the crocodile remained perfectly still, a living statue whose ancient lineage had perfected the art of patience. Only its eyes and nostrils were visible above the water's surface. 2 small constellations of bumps that even the most observant naturalist might mistake for floating debris. Beneath the surface, however, powerful muscles remained coiled and ready, prepared to launch the massive body into action if necessary. Rusty, sensing the tension in his protector, stayed uncharacteristically quiet, pressed against the muddy bank where the crocodile had placed him. His normally wagging tail lay still against his flank, and his ears swiveled constantly, tracking every sound the strangers made. "This is the location from the satellite tracking," the woman said, consulting a handheld device with a glowing screen that reflected in her wire-rimmed glasses. She was the youngest of the 3, perhaps in her early 30s, with sun-darkened skin and hair pulled back in a practical braid. Her voice carried clearly across the water, the acoustics of the river basin amplifying her words. "The signal's been stationary here for almost 2 months. No significant movement beyond this half-mile radius." "That's unusual for a male of that size," one of the men replied, adjusting the large camera hanging from his neck. Older than the woman, with a salt and pepper beard and the weathered face of someone who had spent decades under open skies, he surveyed the riverbank with the practiced eye of an experienced wildlife photographer. Especially during mating season, they typically patrol much larger territories, 20, sometimes 30 miles of riverway. The crocodile's eyes narrowed imperceptibly, ancient vertical pupils contracting slightly in the strengthening morning light. These humans were looking for him specifically. The memory of a brief, sharp pain in his neck from years ago surfaced. The tracking device they had implanted during a previous encounter when he had been younger, less cautious. He had been trapped then, measured, tagged, and released. An indignity that had taught him to be wary of the 2-legged creatures and their mysterious powers. "Conservation says there have been reports of unusual behavior," the second man added, scanning the riverbank through binoculars. Taller than his companions, with a clipboard tucked under one arm and a voice that suggested authority, he appeared to be leading the expedition. Local fishermen claim they've seen it interacting with other animals in non-predatory ways. One report even mentioned a dog or similar canid, though that seems far-fetched. The woman laughed skeptically, the sound startling a nearby heron into flight. "Crocodiles don't make friends. They're apex predators with brains the size of walnuts. Whatever they're seeing, there's a logical explanation." She adjusted her hat against the strengthening sun. Territorial behavior misinterpreted, or perhaps scavenging that looks like sharing. People love to anthropomorphize. Rusty shifted slightly, a small whine building in his throat as his curiosity battled with the instinct to remain hidden. The familiar scent of humans stirred something deep in his domesticated genes. Memories of hands that had once offered food and affection before the cruel abandonment that had led him to this unlikely sanctuary. The crocodile responded with the gentlest of rumbles, a sound so low the humans couldn't detect it, but which traveled through the mud and water to immediately calm the puppy. The vibration conveyed clear meaning. Stay still, stay silent, trust me. Let's set up the blind here, the first man suggested, pointing to a spot that offered a clear view of the inlet while providing some natural cover. If it's still in the area, we'll document whatever's happening. I've got time-lapse cameras and infrared for night observation. If there's anything unusual going on, we'll capture it. The university will want comprehensive data. The taller man agreed, making notes on his clipboard. Behavior, feeding patterns, any interactions with other species. If this specimen is truly exhibiting atypical behavior, it could be significant for our understanding of reptilian cognition. For the next few hours, the humans constructed a camouflaged observation post with the methodical precision of scientists who had performed this ritual countless times before. They worked efficiently, setting up cameras with long-range lenses on tripods anchored firmly in the soft earth. Recording equipment designed to capture sounds beyond human hearing was positioned strategically around the perimeter of their blind. Solar panels were unfolded and angled to capture maximum sunlight, powering the array of technology that would keep vigilant watch when human eyes grew tired. The crocodile remained motionless throughout this process, conserving energy while assessing this new threat. Decades of survival had taught him to recognize patterns, to calculate risks with the cold efficiency that had kept his species virtually unchanged for millions of years. These humans were different from the occasional fishermen or the rare hunters who sometimes ventured into his territory. They weren't seeking to harm directly, but their watching eyes and strange devices represented a different kind of danger. One the ancient reptile couldn't fully comprehend, but instinctively mistrusted. As the afternoon progressed, the scientists took turns observing through high-powered binoculars, making notes, and occasionally speaking into handheld recorders. They collected water samples, measured temperatures at various depths, and cataloged the visible wildlife in meticulous detail. Their presence disrupted the usual rhythms of the inlet. Birds remained distant, fish swam deeper, and the family of otters that had become regular visitors stayed conspicuously absent. "No sign of our subject," the woman reported, checking her tracking device again with a frown. "The signal's definitely coming from this area, but he's keeping out of sight." "Crocodiles can stay submerged for hours," the older man reminded her, adjusting the settings on one of the cameras. "And this one's smart. Survived long enough to reach that size. He knows we're here." As dusk approached, painting the sky in deepening shades of orange and purple, the researchers gathered their personal equipment and prepared to leave. The woman activated several motion sensors, placing them at strategic points along the shoreline. "These will alert us to any significant movement," she explained, checking the connections one final time. "If our subject returns to this spot overnight, we'll know." "The automated equipment will run continuously," the older man added, securing weatherproof covers over the more sensitive cameras. "Infrared will give us clear footage even in complete darkness." The taller man made one last survey of their setup, nodding with satisfaction. "Let's head back to base camp. We'll return at first light." The researchers retreated to a camp they had established further inland, their voices gradually fading among the trees. Only when silence had truly returned, broken only by the natural sounds of the river at dusk. The splash of hunting fish, The chorus of frogs beginning their nightly serenade, the rustle of nocturnal creatures emerging from daytime hiding places. Did the crocodile finally move, emerging from the water with deliberate slowness? Water cascaded from armored scales as the massive body rose from the depths where it had remained hidden for hours. Despite his size, the crocodile moved with surprising grace, each motion calculated to create minimal disturbance. Ancient eyes, adapted for both day and night vision, carefully scanned the observation post the humans had left behind. The unblinking gaze took in every detail: the positioned cameras, the small blinking lights of recording equipment, the nearly invisible threads of tripwires that would alert the absent researchers to any significant movement in their chosen observation zone. Rusty immediately bounded over, unable to contain his relief that the long period of enforced stillness was over. His paws left small imprints in the mud as he circled his massive protector, tail now wagging with unrestrained enthusiasm. The crocodile nudged him gently with his snout, a gesture that had become their ritual greeting. But there was urgency in the contact this time, guiding the puppy away from the direction the humans had taken and the watching electronic eyes they had left behind. The crocodile made a soft rumbling sound, different from its usual communications, higher pitched, with a rhythmic quality that conveyed clear meaning to the puppy. Tonight, they would need to find a new resting place. Somewhere the humans' technology couldn't observe them. Somewhere they could regroup and assess this new development in their unusual coexistence. Under cover of darkness, with the waxing moon occasionally emerging from behind scattered clouds to cast silver light across the water, the crocodile led Rusty further upstream, away from their familiar territory. The puppy followed trustingly, occasionally looking back at the only home he had known since his abandonment. His small legs worked hard to keep pace with the crocodile's powerful swimming, but months of wilderness living had strengthened the once frail puppy. He moved with growing confidence through the nighttime landscape, guided by senses that had sharpened through necessity and survival. The crocodile moved with purpose, as if following some internal map to a destination already determined. Perhaps it was ancient migratory instinct, or memory of territories explored in younger years before the tracking device had been implanted. Whatever guided the great reptile, its path was deliberate, avoiding shallow areas where they might leave obvious tracks and steering clear of human settlements that occasionally appeared as distant clusters of light along the riverbank. Just before midnight, when the forest had grown denser along the shoreline and the river narrowed between steeper banks, they reached a small tributary that fed into the main river. The crocodile turned into this narrower waterway, where overhanging branches created natural archways that would hide them from aerial observation. Rusty splashed along the shallows beside him, occasionally scrambling up onto the bank when the water grew too deep, then rejoining his protector when the path allowed. After nearly an hour of careful navigation through the tributary, which wound like a dark ribbon through increasingly remote wilderness, they arrived at their destination, a hidden lagoon surrounded by dense vegetation, with a small island at its center. The island, perhaps 20 feet across, rose slightly, higher than the surrounding water level, offering dry ground covered with soft moss and protected by a canopy of ancient trees whose branches dipped low enough to create natural shelter. The crocodile circled the island once, checking for potential threats or other inhabitants before guiding Rusty to a narrow beach of smooth pebbles. The puppy shook himself vigorously, sending droplets of water flying in all directions, then explored their new sanctuary with curious sniffs and tentative paws. The island showed no signs of recent human presence, no footprints, no cut branches, no artificial materials. It was pristine wilderness, the kind of place that might not have felt human intrusion for decades, perhaps longer. This would be their sanctuary, for now. The crocodile dragged himself fully onto the island, the effort of their journey evident in the heaviness of his movements. Age and the long swim had taxed even his formidable strength. Finding a suitable spot where moss grew thickest, the ancient reptile settled his massive body, creating a depression in the soft ground that would cradle them through the night. But both of them, in their different ways, understood that something fundamental had changed. The world beyond their small paradise had taken notice of their extraordinary bond, and that attention brought danger neither of them could fully comprehend. The crocodile, with the wisdom of years and the instinct of a species that had survived multiple extinction events, sensed that the humans would not easily abandon their search. The tracking device embedded beneath his armored hide ensured they could find him again, no matter how far or how cleverly he traveled. Rusty, though lacking the crocodile's ancient wisdom, understood change through simpler metrics. The tension in his protector's body, the unfamiliar surroundings, the absence of the comfortable routines they had established in their previous home. His domesticated ancestry had bred in him a sensitivity to mood and emotion that transcended species barriers, allowing him to read the crocodile's concern as clearly as if it had been expressed in words. As they settled on the island, Rusty curled against the crocodile's side as he had done every night since their first encounter. His small body sought the familiar warmth that radiated from the reptile's sun-soaked scales, now cooling in the night air, but still retaining enough heat to provide comfort. The ancient reptile's protective tail curved around the puppy's small body, a living barrier against whatever threats the future might hold. In this position, they had weathered storms both literal and figurative, finding in each other's presence a solace that defied natural law and evolutionary programming. Above them, stars wheeled across the night sky, pinpoints of ancient light that had witnessed the rise and fall of species far longer than either crocodile or canine had walked the earth. These celestial observers were indifferent to the small miracle unfolding beneath their eternal light, the impossible friendship that challenged everything science thought it knew about animal behavior and interspecies relationships. In the darkness, with only the sounds of lapping water and distant night creatures as their lullaby, the bond between predator and prey grew stronger still, forged now in shared adversity and the instinctive knowledge that together they faced a world that had no place for such an impossible friendship. Whatever came next, whether pursuit by curious scientists or the natural challenges of wilderness survival, they would face it as they had faced everything since that first fateful encounter at the river's edge. Together, defying the very laws of nature that should have made them enemies rather than family. As Rusty drifted into sleep, his breathing deep and regular against the crocodile's flank, the ancient reptile remained vigilant, yellow eyes gleaming occasionally in the darkness as he scanned their surroundings. The humans had brought change, and change meant danger. But they had survived dangers before. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions. For tonight, on this isolated island under the watching stars, they were safe. For tonight, that would have to be enough. The sun rose the next morning, casting golden rays across the hidden lagoon, illuminating the vibrant greens of the vegetation that surrounded Rusty and the crocodile. The air was crisp, filled with the sounds of the waking jungle, the rhythmic calls of birds, the rustle of leaves as small creatures scurried about, and the distant croaking of frogs. For a moment, the world felt peaceful, a sanctuary untouched by the chaos of the outside. Rusty stirred, stretching his small limbs and yawning widely, He glanced up at the crocodile, who lay still, one eye partially open, ever watchful. The reptile's presence was a calming reassurance, a reminder that he was safe. Rusty scampered closer, nuzzling against the crocodile's sturdy flank, his tail wagging energetically. The morning ritual had begun, and the bond between them was stronger than ever. The crocodile responded with a low rumble, a sound that resonated deep within his chest. It was a sound of contentment, a signal that all was well. As Rusty bounced around, the crocodile's mind was already turning, calculating their next steps. The humans had left their mark, and it was only a matter of time before they returned, intrigued by the unusual behavior they had witnessed. The crocodile knew that staying hidden was paramount. He needed to assert control over their new territory to ensure that they could thrive without the prying eyes of humans documenting their every move. With a sense of purpose, he rose to his feet, the mossy earth squishing beneath his weight. Rusty paused his playful antics, sensing the shift in the air. "Let's explore," the crocodile seemed to say. And with that, he led Rusty deeper into the lagoon. The landscape shifted around them, revealing lush ferns and wildflowers, their colors vibrant against the backdrop of rich greens and browns. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming flora, a sensory feast that invigorated Rusty as he bounded ahead. As they moved through the underbrush, the crocodile remained alert, his senses heightened. He could hear the distant sounds of the river, feel the vibrations of the earth beneath his massive feet. This was his domain, a place he had navigated for years, but now it felt different, charged with the electricity of change and the weight of expectation. They reached the edge of the lagoon, where the water sparkled under the sun, a clear invitation to swim. Rusty splashed into the shallows, his joyful yips echoing across the water, while the crocodile watched carefully, ensuring that no threats lurked nearby. The puppy dove and darted through the water, his playful nature shining through as he chased after small fish that flitted just beneath the surface. The crocodile, too, felt the thrill of the water, but his instincts ran deeper. As he submerged himself, he allowed the cool liquid to wash over him, bringing with it a sense of serenity. Underwater, he glided with grace, his powerful tail propelling him forward. He could see Rusty's silhouette above him, a small shape frolicking in the sun-drenched shallows, blissfully unaware of the world beyond their secluded paradise. But the crocodile was not without his worries. The humans would return. He felt it in his bones. Their strange devices could track his movements, and their curiosity could spell danger for both him and Rusty. He needed to devise a plan, a way to protect their sanctuary without drawing too much attention. When he resurfaced, Rusty was waiting, tail wagging furiously, eyes sparkling with excitement. The crocodile nudged him playfully, and they shared a moment of camaraderie before the reality of their situation settled in once more. "Let's find a way to hide," the crocodile seemed to convey. And together they moved further along the banks of the lagoon, seeking out spots where they could remain concealed from prying eyes. They searched for dense thickets and overhanging branches, places where the shadows could shield them from the humans' encroaching interest. As they explored, Rusty's playful spirit remained undiminished. He darted ahead, sniffing at every new plant and chasing after insects that buzzed in the air. The crocodile watched, his heart swelling with affection for the little creature that had become his unexpected companion. Rusty's resilience and joy reminded him of the joy of life, of the simple pleasures that existed even in the most precarious of circumstances. Eventually, they found a small grove of trees with thick foliage that provided excellent cover. The crocodile settled down beneath the branches, creating a makeshift den that would shield them from the sun, while allowing them to keep watch over the lagoon. Rusty curled up beside him, content and safe, as the crocodile positioned himself so he could see the water and the surrounding area. Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher in the sky, its warmth wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. The crocodile remained alert, his instincts honed to detect any signs of danger. He heard the distant sounds of birds, the rustle of leaves, and the gentle lapping of water against the shore. But it was the faint crunch of footsteps that set his heart racing, a sound that signaled the return of the humans. Rusty, sensing the shift in energy, lifted his head, ears perked, ready to bolt at a moment's notice. The crocodile remained still, his powerful body coiled like a spring, prepared to defend his companion if necessary. From their hidden vantage point, they watched as the researchers returned to the lagoon, excitement evident in their voices. The woman held the tracking device, her eyes scanning the area with a mix of anticipation and determination. "There, look at the readings," she exclaimed, pointing toward the water. "He's still here. We need to be patient. He'll return to the surface eventually." The crocodile's heart raced. They were actively searching for him, and the implications of that search weighed heavily on him. He needed to act, not just for his own safety, but for Rusty's as well. As the humans began to set up their equipment once more, the crocodile made a decision. He would use the element of surprise to lead them away from their sanctuary. With a final glance at Rusty, who looked up at him with wide, trusting eyes, the crocodile slipped silently into the water, his powerful limbs propelling him with speed and stealth. Rusty watched as his protector disappeared beneath the surface, instinctively knowing that this was part of a plan. Moments later, the crocodile burst forth from the water at a distance, creating a dramatic splash that caught the researchers' attention. "Look!" the man shouted, pointing excitedly. "There he is." With their focus drawn away from the lagoon, the crocodile used this opportunity to swim downstream, creating a wide arc that would lead him away from Rusty's hiding place. He swam with purpose, creating splashes and sounds that would distract the humans and draw them further from their original location. Rusty held his breath, feeling a mix of anxiety and admiration for the crocodile's cleverness. He knew that this was a critical moment, one that could mean the difference between safety and danger. As the humans hurried to follow the commotion, the crocodile led them further into the river's twists and turns, away from Rusty's hiding spot. The crocodile knew the terrain well. Years of navigating its waters had given him a sense of direction and instinct for escape. After several minutes of focused swimming, the crocodile finally turned back, slipping into a dense thicket of reeds where he could remain, hidden yet again. He waited, listening to the sounds of the humans growing more distant, their voices fading into the distance. Eventually, he felt it was safe to return. With a powerful stroke, he re-emerged from the water, his eyes searching for Rusty. The puppy was still in their grove, watching with wide, trusting eyes. The crocodile swam back quickly, relieved to see that his companion was unharmed. Rusty bounded over to him, tail wagging furiously. "You did it," he seemed to say, his excitement palpable. The crocodile nudged him gently, a gesture of affection and reassurance. They had outsmarted the intruders, at least for now. But the threat remained, and the crocodile knew that this was only a temporary reprieve. The humans would not give up easily. Their curiosity would drive them to continue their investigation. "Let's regroup," the crocodile conveyed, guiding Rusty back to their hidden grove. They would need to devise a more permanent solution, one that would ensure their safety and protect the bond they had forged against all odds. As they settled back into their sanctuary, the crocodile's mind whirred with thoughts of strategy and survival. They would continue to work together, to adapt and navigate the challenges that lay ahead. Their bond, forged in adversity, would be their greatest strength. With the sun beginning its descent, casting long shadows across the water, Rusty curled up beside the crocodile once more. The sounds of the jungle filled the air, a symphony of life that buzzed around them. They were a peculiar pair, predator and prey, united by circumstance and an unbreakable bond that defied nature's expectations. As night fell, the crocodile remained vigilant, but fatigue began to settle in. Rusty drifted off to sleep, his soft breathing a comforting rhythm against the backdrop of the nocturnal world. The crocodile's heart swelled with a fierce protectiveness. No matter what challenges lay ahead, he would safeguard the little puppy who had become his companion and friend. Together, they would face whatever came next, their extraordinary friendship lighting the way through the darkness, a testament to the resilience of life in the wild. The world may change around them, but their bond would remain constant, a rare spark of connection in a universe often marked by the struggle for survival. The following days passed in a delicate balance of caution and curiosity. The crocodile and Rusty continued to explore their hidden sanctuary, the lagoon becoming a world of discovery and adventure, despite the ever-present threat posed by the humans. Each day brought new wonders, the vibrant colors of blooming flowers, the exciting flurry of insects, and the dance of light on the water's surface as fish leapt joyfully, breaking the stillness of the lagoon. Rusty, full of youthful exuberance, thrived in this lush environment. He chased after dragonflies, his little legs propelling him across the soft earth as he leaped and pounced, trying to catch the elusive creatures that flitted just out of reach. The crocodile watched with a mix of amusement and pride, his heart swelling at the sight of the puppy's uncontainable spirit. In these moments, the weight of the world outside their sanctuary faded, and the bond between them grew stronger, an unspoken understanding that they would protect one another at all costs. But as the days turned to weeks, the crocodile could feel the tension in the air. The humans had not given up their pursuit. Their presence loomed like a dark cloud on the horizon, a reminder that they were not quite free. The crocodile spent his nights watching the stars, the vastness of the universe reflecting the enormity of their situation. He was a creature of instinct, and instinct told him that the humans would soon return, and when they did, they would come with renewed determination. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and lavender, the crocodile decided it was time to assess their situation more critically. With Rusty by his side, he led them further along the banks of the lagoon, seeking vantage points where they could observe their surroundings without being seen. The evening air was thick with the sounds of the jungle, crickets chirping and frogs croaking, a symphony of nocturnal life that filled the silence with vibrant energy. They found a large rock formation that jutted out over the water, providing a perfect lookout spot. From this height, they could see the river bend, curving away toward the horizon, its surface glistening under the fading light. The crocodile settled down, his powerful body blending seamlessly with the natural landscape, while Rusty perched beside him, his eyes wide with wonder and curiosity. "Look at the water," the crocodile said, his voice low but filled with urgency. "It flows toward the river, and beyond that, there are places where we could go, where we can hide better. We need to plan." Rusty tilted his head, ears perked, understanding the gravity of the situation. The puppy's heart raced with both excitement and a hint of fear. He had grown to love their sanctuary, but he also felt the thrill of adventure coursing through him. "What do we do?" he asked, his voice a soft whine as he looked up at the crocodile, the trust in his eyes unshakable. The crocodile took a deep breath, the cool night air filling his lungs. "We must stay vigilant. The humans will return, and when they do, we need to be ready. We will explore further upriver. There are places where the banks are steep and the underbrush thick. If we can find a way to hide ourselves, we can avoid their eyes." Rusty nodded, determination flashing in his eyes. He was ready for whatever lay ahead. He had faced challenges before, and he would stand by his friend. "Let's go now. We can find a new place, a better place." His excitement was contagious, and the crocodile couldn't help but feel a sense of hope blending with the anxiety that had taken root in his heart. With a renewed sense of purpose, they set out under the cover of night, moving quietly along the water's edge. The moon cast a silver glow on the landscape, illuminating their path as they navigated through the thick underbrush. The crocodile led the way, his powerful body gliding through the shadows with practiced ease, while Rusty followed closely, his small form darting between the larger plants and trees. As they moved further upstream, the landscape began to change. The river narrowed, and the banks grew steeper, creating a wilder, more untamed environment. The air was thick with the scent of rich earth and blooming flora, and the sounds of the jungle shifted to a more primal chorus. Rusty felt invigorated by the change, his senses heightened as he took in the new sights and sounds. Eventually, they came upon a secluded cove, hidden away from the main flow of the river. Here, the water pooled into a small, tranquil lake, surrounded by dense foliage and towering trees. It felt untouched, a hidden gem in the wilderness. The crocodile surveyed the area, his instincts telling him that this could be the perfect place to remain hidden. "This will do," he declared, his voice firm and resolute. "We can make this our new home, at least until we figure out how to deal with the humans." Rusty bounded forward, his excitement bubbling over. He splashed into the shallow water, barking joyfully as he tried to catch small fish that flitted just beneath the surface. The crocodile watched with a sense of satisfaction, knowing that they had found a sanctuary that would offer them protection while they strategized their next steps. As they settled into their new surroundings, the crocodile felt a shift in the air. The weight of worry still lingered, but he was buoyed by the hope that this place could offer them the safety they desperately needed. He took Rusty under his protective wing, guiding him as they explored the cove, sniffing the air and tasting the fresh water that flowed around them. Days turned into a week, and the crocodile and Rusty became accustomed to their new home. They learned the rhythms of the cove, the patterns of the animals that frequented the area, and the best places to hide should the humans come searching. Rusty continued to play, his spirit unbroken, while the crocodile remained vigilant, ever watchful for signs of the intruders who had disrupted their lives. But just as they began to settle into this new routine, the world around them shifted once more. One morning, as the sun rose bright and warm, the crocodile sensed something was off. The usual sounds of the jungle felt muted, as if the world held its breath. He lifted his head, scanning the horizon, and then he heard it. A distant rumble, a sound that sent a chill down his spine. "Rusty," he called out, his voice filled with urgency. The puppy, who had been chasing butterflies, paused and looked up, sensing the change in the air. The crocodile's instincts screamed at him, and he knew they needed to act quickly. "What is it?" Rusty asked, his playful demeanor shifting to one of concern. "There's a storm coming," the crocodile replied, his voice low and serious. "We need to find shelter. It could bring heavy rain and flooding, and we must be prepared." Without hesitation, the crocodile led Rusty back toward the thicker cover of the trees, where the underbrush would shield them from the worst of the storm. As they moved, the rumble grew louder, and the sky darkened ominously, clouds rolling in like a great wave. The air smelled electric, charged with the promise of a fierce tempest. They reached a thicket deep within the cove, and the crocodile positioned himself against the sturdy roots of a large tree, creating a barrier for Rusty. "Stay close to me," he instructed, his body low and protective. Rusty nestled against him, feeling the warmth of his friend as the first drops of rain began to fall. The storm hit with sudden ferocity, rain lashing down in torrents, accompanied by the roar of thunder that echoed through the trees. The crocodile kept his body low to the ground, his instincts guiding him as he protected Rusty from the deluge. The puppy trembled slightly, his fur soaked almost instantly, but he felt safe in the shadow of his guardian. As the storm raged outside, Rusty looked up at the crocodile, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and awe. "Will it be okay?" he asked, his voice barely audible above the howling wind and pounding rain. The crocodile nodded, though he felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on him. "We'll be fine. Just hold on tight. Nature can be fierce, but we are stronger together." They endured the storm, the world outside transformed into a chaotic blend of wind and water. Nature unleashing its power with unrestrained force. The crocodile's heart raced, not just from the storm's intensity, but from the realization that they were facing yet another challenge together. This bond, forged in the fires of adversity, had grown resilient, and they would face whatever came next as one. As the hours passed, the storm began to subside, the rain easing to a gentle patter against the leaves overhead. The crocodile could feel Rusty's body trembling beside him, and he turned slightly, nudging the puppy with his snout. "You did well, little one," he murmured softly. "We're safe here. Just a little longer." Eventually, the rain ceased entirely, leaving behind a world washed clean and glistening. The crocodile carefully emerged from their shelter, surveying the surroundings. The cove was transformed. The water level had risen significantly, pooling around the roots of the trees and creating new pathways through the landscape. "Let's see how the cove has changed," the crocodile said, leading Rusty out into the open. The puppy followed, eagerly, his excitement bubbling over as he explored the new terrain. They stepped carefully through the muddy ground, the air fresh and cool after the storm. As they explored, they discovered that the storm had revealed new treasures. A cache of fish had been dislodged from the shallows, and they swam frantically in the newly formed pools. Rusty's eyes widened in delight, and he bounded toward the water, splashing joyfully as he tried to catch the fish with his tiny paws. The crocodile watched, a sense of relief flooding through him. In the aftermath of the storm, they had not only survived, but found new opportunities for sustenance. The cove was now abundant, a bounty of food that would sustain them in the days to come. "See? Nature always finds a way," the crocodile said, his voice rich with wisdom. "Even in the face of chaos, new life emerges." Rusty glanced back, a fish slipping from his grasp as he grinned at the crocodile. "Can we eat them?" he asked, his excitement bubbling over. "Absolutely," the crocodile replied, moving to the water's edge and demonstrating with a quick, powerful snap of his jaws. A fish was caught in an instant, its scales glistening in the light. He brought it to shore and laid it before Rusty, who stared in awe at the creature. With the storm behind them and a newfound abundance ahead, they feasted together. the crocodile's cautious nature balanced by Rusty's unbridled enthusiasm. They savored the meal, grateful for the sustenance that would fuel them in the days to come. As they finished eating, the crocodile felt a sense of hope rising within him. They had faced the storm, both literally and metaphorically, and emerged unscathed. The night sky stretched above them, stars twinkling like distant beacons of promise. Together, they had navigated the challenges thrown their way, and the bond between them had only deepened. But even as they celebrated their small victories, the crocodile knew that the threat of the humans still loomed. The storm had brought them closer, but it also served as a reminder of the unpredictability of their existence. They would need to continue adapting, to remain vigilant, and to protect their extraordinary friendship against all odds. With a renewed sense of purpose, the crocodile turned to Rusty, who was chasing after the last few fish that had evaded capture. "Tomorrow, we will explore further upriver," he said, his voice steady and resolute. "We will find a place where we can truly be safe." Rusty paused, the fish forgotten for the moment, his eyes bright with determination. "I'm ready," he exclaimed, his tail wagging furiously. "We'll find our new home." As the moon rose high in the night sky, the crocodile and Rusty settled down together once more, their hearts filled with hope and courage. They had faced storms, both the literal and the metaphorical, together, and they would continue to do so, side by side, no matter what challenges lay ahead. Together, they would forge a path through the wilderness, navigating the unknown, and they would emerge stronger, their bond unbreakable in the face of whatever trials awaited them. In a world filled with uncertainty, they had found each other, a friendship that defied the very laws of nature and had turned the wildest of circumstances into a tale of resilience, hope, and love. As the night deepened, the sounds of the jungle enveloped them in a comforting embrace. Rusty nestled closer to the crocodile, his small body seeking warmth and security. The crocodile, ever watchful, kept his head raised, scanning the horizon for any signs of danger. The stars twinkled brightly above, a reminder of the vastness of the world beyond their little sanctuary. And the crocodile felt a sense of peace wash over him. But even in this moment of serenity, he could not shake the feeling of unease that had settled in his gut. The humans would return. He could sense it, as surely as he could feel the cool breeze against his scales. They would come equipped with their cameras and devices, ready to document the extraordinary bond between predator and prey, and they would not leave without answers. As dawn approached, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, the crocodile made a silent vow to protect Rusty at all costs. He would not allow anyone to come between them, to disrupt the fragile peace they had forged in the chaos of their lives. No matter what it took, he would ensure that their friendship endured. The next morning, after the sun had fully risen and the world around them came alive with color and sound, the crocodile and Rusty set out to explore the riverbank once more. The air was fresh and filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers, a promise of new beginnings. They moved cautiously, the crocodile leading the way as they navigated the twists and turns of the river. They discovered new paths, hidden nooks, and crannies filled with life. Rusty chased after butterflies, his delighted barks echoing through the trees, while the crocodile kept a watchful eye, ensuring that no danger lurked nearby. As they ventured further, the crocodile felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were carving out their own space in a world that had so often sought to confine them. But as they rounded a bend in the river, the crocodile's instincts flared once more. He halted abruptly, sensing the presence of something or someone out of place. The air was still, too still, and the cacophony of jungle sounds had faded into an unnatural silence. Rusty, sensing the shift in mood, looked up with wide eyes. "What is it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The crocodile lowered his head, his body stiffening as he strained to listen. "I don't know yet, but something isn't right. Stay close." They remained still. Hidden among the foliage, the crocodile's keen senses alert to any movement. After a tense moment, he caught sight of a figure in the distance. The humans had returned, and this time, they were not alone. Two new faces accompanied them, local fishermen. The crocodile's heart raced as he watched the group gather on the riverbank, their voices rising in excitement. "There's something special here," one of the fishermen said, gesturing toward the water. "We've seen it too. The stories about the crocodile and the dog. We need to capture this on film." The crocodile's mind raced. The fishermen were not just here to fish. They were drawn by the stories of the unusual bond he had formed with Rusty. This was no longer just a scientific observation. They were here to exploit their friendship for profit. And that realization filled the crocodile with a sense of dread that, "We have to go," the crocodile said urgently, nudging Rusty gently but firmly. "We can't let them see us. They won't understand what we have." Rusty's eyes widened. "But I want to stay. They might be nice." The crocodile shook his head, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "Not all humans have good intentions, Rusty. We've seen that. They might want to capture us, take us away, or worse. We must protect what we have." With that, the crocodile led Rusty down a narrow path, away from the riverbank and deeper into the jungle. He could feel the puppy's reluctance, but knew that this was for the best. They needed to create distance between themselves and the humans, to find a place where they could breathe freely without the threat of being observed or captured. As they moved through the dense underbrush, Rusty reluctantly followed, his playful spirit dampened by the gravity of the situation. The crocodile's heart raced, not just from the physical exertion, but from the fear of what might happen if they were discovered. He pushed forward, determined to find a sanctuary far removed from the prying eyes of those who sought to exploit their bond. Finally, after what felt like hours of navigating the thick foliage, they stumbled upon a small clearing. The sunlight filtered through the canopy above, casting dappled patterns on the ground. The crocodile paused, allowing Rusty to catch up, and they both took a moment to breathe. "This is far enough for now," the crocodile said, his voice low but steady. "We can rest here, but we must remain vigilant." Rusty nodded, panting slightly as he collapsed onto the soft grass. "What do we do now?" he asked, looking up at the crocodile with a mix of worry and determination. "We wait," the crocodile replied, his eyes scanning the edges of the clearing. "We need to observe them from a distance. If they come this way, we must be ready to move again. But we also need to gather information. We need to know what they're planning." Rusty's ears perked up. "Can I help?" The crocodile nodded, appreciating the puppy's eagerness. "Yes, but stay close. If you see or hear anything unusual, let me know immediately." As they settled into their new hiding spot, the crocodile felt a renewed sense of purpose. They would not be victims. They would take control of their situation, using the knowledge they gained to protect their unique bond. Together, they would navigate the challenges ahead. And together, they would find a way to ensure their safety in a world that often sought to tear them apart. The sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the clearing as they waited. The sounds of the jungle began to shift, the evening chorus of insects and frogs filling the air. Rusty shifted beside the crocodile, his body tense with anticipation. They were both acutely aware that the humans were still nearby, their voices drifting through the trees,